This week on the Ferguson Home, we are going to discuss pornography again, but it's going to be a little bit different in that we are going to talk about how do we help our kids fight pornography.
Well, hey, welcome back to the Ferguson Home. We're so glad to have you with us this week. We are enjoying having these conversations with you, and we just really appreciate you subscribing to our YouTube channel. And if these videos are helpful to you, we just want to remind you to share them on social media or to leave us comments so that we know how we can help you in future videos. Last week we talked about how couples can fight pornography together in their marriage. But we know this is a huge topic of interest for parents as they're trying to help their kids fight pornography. And so this week on the Ferguson Home, since we ourselves are raising 6 children in this current media age, we wanted to talk about some of the things that we're doing. We're obviously not like the experts here, but we just want to discuss some of the thoughts we have about it and to get you discussing as parents how you can help your kids fight pornography.
Yeah. And if you're a teen watching, you have bring these conversations up with your parents. Surprise them.
That's right. Say, hey, I was watching the Ferguson Home video today, and I want to talk to you about this. The first thing we would say to you as parents is to really make sure you have open and honest conversations with your kids about sex. I think sometimes kids get into pornography because they're just curious about sexuality.
They Google something. I mean, so often teenagers or young preteens just Google because they're curious. They hear a word at school and want to know what it is.
Yeah, and so we've always said that as parents, we want to be the ones to introduce concepts and words and ideas about sexuality to our kids. Right. And sometimes, that can create some awkward moments where we're talking to our kids in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, and we're talking to them about sexuality, and they're saying, "Ooh, Mom, that's so gross," or "Dad, you're embarrassing me that you're bringing that up." But there's a real strategy behind that on our part, and that is that we want our kids to hear about sexuality from us and not from pornography and not from the world. And we want our kids to really look at us as the ones who are the experts on this topic. And we want to encourage all the parents out there. I know that this is like a terrifying conversation for most parents. Like, you want me to talk to my kids about sex? And yes, the sex talk is not a one-time talk where you just go through the anatomy and you say this is how intercourse works. The sex talk is a series of conversations all through your young person's life where you're helping them understand and navigate sexuality. And I always wanted my kids to be in a place where one of their peers will say something at school about sex or word they've heard or phrase they've heard, and that my kids will be able to say, "Yeah, I already know about that. My mom and dad have talked to me about that." And I just wanted them to be equipped to be able to say, you know what, I don't have to go looking to my peers who are idiots when it comes to sexuality.
We say that in the kindest way. We feel a little bit bad, but they are. And the thing is that if you're silent on it because you think, oh, they're too innocent and they don't know about any of this. Truth is they do. And they're going to take your silence as that you don't know about that topic. And so then they're going to go find their friend on the playground or a recess or a school bus who is willing to talk about it, and that person's going to become their expert. And so I'm not quite sure if that you want to relinquish that role to some 6th grader on the school bus to tell your kids and become their sex expert. Sexpert. Sorry.
Absolutely. In the context of having those open and honest conversations, and we always say to our kids, nothing's off limits. And all of our kids have reacted differently to these conversations. We've had some of our kids who are like, okay, you've told me, I don't want to talk about it anymore, and we have to be the ones to keep bringing it up. And we have kids that keep coming back to us with more questions. Well, what about this? And how do I explain this? And have you heard this? And whatever. So your kids are going to all react differently to it. But in the context of those open and honest conversations, the second thing we'd say to you as parents is give your kids a positive biblical vision of sexuality in marriage. And all of those words are important. Like, you want to give them a positive view of sex, not a negative view. Like, it's not like God is anti-sex. He created sex.
He says it's good.
He says it's
We said
good
that last week.
when it's enjoyed unselfishly in the marriage relationship. So that's part of God's creation, and so it's in God's word. You don't want to be the one to say, "Oh, we can't talk about that. We want to avoid that topic," because what that does is it makes your kids feel like, "Oh, my parents have this real negative view of sex, and the world has this real positive view of sex," which is not the right frame for this conversation. We want to say, "Hey, we've got a very positive, holistic, healthy, biblical view of sexuality that we want to give to you, and the world has a very distorted, broken, corrupt view of sexuality that just hurts people." And that's the way you want to frame the conversation for your kids.
That's good. Yep. The third thing is that you want to explain the dangers of pornography to your kids at a young age. Like when they're teens, you want to start prepping them. Our middle schoolers have said, in fact, I went to a football game recently, a middle school football game, and I'd forgotten to turn my AirDrop off. For some reason, it was on for everyone, and I started getting these, and they weren't like sexually explicit. They were kind of hilarious. But it was like a bodybuilding guy, and as soon as it popped up, my kids were like, "Oh, that's Roberto or something," and I was like, "What?" And they're like, "You better turn your AirDrop off, because this is how stuff gets passed at school. If your AirDrop's on, people are just sending pictures and images," and so you have to start early explaining the dangers, not just don't do this, because kids are going to try to push boundaries. But if they understand your heart and if they understand the dangers, I mean, teens are smart. Like, they want the best for themselves too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's a great resource that we've used before with like young kids. I think it's called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, that kind of introduces this concept in an age-appropriate way to small children of like, what are pictures that we should be looking at and pictures we want to avoid. And it's just, how do you start that conversation when your kids are young so they know what to watch out for?
Yeah.
And then also, as your kids get older and they do have devices and those kind of things, just helping them understand, like, the culture they're going to walk into is their peers are going to think, "Oh, this is really funny," or "This is really cool that I can look at these really graphic sexual images." But what you want to help them understand is there are consequences to starting to shape their mind by those images. And so, again, back to having a really positive sexual ethic that we're presenting to our kids, to say, "Hey, we want you not just to stay away from this stuff, but we want you to have a wonderful marriage someday where your sexuality is enjoyed with your spouse, and looking at all this trash when you're a middle school, high school, college student is going to negatively impact that."
And we also, our three oldest are boys. So we have a 16-year-old boy, a 14-year-old boy, and a 13-year-old boy. And we have been working with them since they were young. But hey, as you go into those middle school years, part of pornography, if you're looking at those images, then when you struggle to be friends with girls, because those girls look a lot like the images that you're looking at. And so then it just makes it awkward and weird. And we're like starting young to say, no, you need to have good friendships and be able to interact and be kind and treat them well and not see them as objects. But pornography just totally depicts women as objects. And so that goes against what we're teaching them to be a good friend. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so that's really important for you to say to your kids is, we want you to have healthy friendships with the opposite sex, and pornography is going to really make that hard. So that's really important. And then fourth, just as you help your kids fight pornography, you do want to get into some of those practical boundaries of things that you put in place to help them. I always say to parents, if you give your son or daughter a totally unfiltered, unaccountable, unprotected, internet-connected device, it's almost exactly the same as giving them a subscription to a pornographic magazine and putting it on the table in your living room, but telling them not to look at it.
Yeah.
Like, that's not going to work.
And the producers of porn are brilliant, and it's a money-making machine, and so they know how to get to the heart of your child.
That's
and they
right.
know how to get to in front of your child. So if you give them any piece of technology, you can bet that there are really smart people who are bent on making a lot of money off of your kid, that will find a way.
So just some practical boundaries that we have, because most kids are going to get some kind of internet-enabled device before they get a cell phone, right? They're going to get a tablet or something where they can get on the internet, even when they're in elementary school.
Yeah.
But what you want to do, so if they're connected through your Wi-Fi, is you want to have some protection on your Wi-Fi router at your house. And so for us, that's Family DNS, which is a service you can get on your router. There's other services you can get that filters the internet that comes through your router into your home. So anybody who connects to the internet through your router, that's going to be filtered. So that's a basic step you've got to take when your kids are first getting on the internet. Second is when they cross over into getting their own devices that have cell service, then that takes it to a whole new level, because what you do with your router at that point is irrelevant, because they can just get on AT&T's network or Verizon's network and access whatever they want. And so at that point, there's other things you got to put in place. For our family, there's two things that we do. One is called Accountable to You, and we can put that link in the notes below the video as well, just for you to have access to that service. But it's very affordable, and you can put it on as many devices as you want for your family. And what it does is it just helps everybody be accountable to what am I doing. And again, because the enemy works in darkness, when people are doing things and they're not accountable to anybody else, and that's where we get into trouble. And that's what I tell my kids is, there ever something that you're doing that you don't want your parents to know about, or you don't want your friends to know about, or you are hiding from everybody, that should be the first red flag that you're doing something that God doesn't want you to do.
And I'll tell you another benefit of Accountable to You is that we keep telling our teens that whatever you do that you think's in secret, if it's on any kind of device, it will be found by somebody.
Absolutely.
For sure. And so no matter all the private windows and all the things that are being created to make you feel like it's in private, there is somebody always that can get to that information. And so we've seen that play out and really destroy adults, where stuff they thought was in private was not private and came out at just the right time. So the Accountable to You, it'll pop up immediately if they are watching a video or something. And so it's trained our teens to where they are realizing that everything they do is public to someone. And so we all need that train of thought. We all need to be reminded that there's really nothing that we can be done in private, even if it says in private. And so I just love that it's kind of training them in that mindset from a young age.
Yeah, and because in addition to what Barry's saying, we also are saying, hey, even in addition to the fact that what you're doing is being seen by somebody, it's always being seen by God. And so, yeah, you want to be accountable to the fact that what you think is in private and secret is really not. And so Accountable to You is important for us. And then the other thing we use on all of our wireless devices, all of our phones and everything, is a service for our kids called RPAC, OURPACT, RPAC. And it's a service that allows a parent to control what apps your kids have and what times they have those apps. And so it drives our kids crazy. They get frustrated with it. That's how we know it's working. But for us, what that allows is as your kids get older, they show that they're responsible, they get more access to things, they get it for longer periods of time. And it's just like anything else in your life, that as you grow into adulthood and maturity, you have more freedom and things as you're showing that you're responsible. So anyway, some of those things are practical boundaries. We have other things as far as where they charge their phones and things we do to try to make sure they keep the phones out of their bedrooms and those kind of things. But there's technology boundaries, there are practical boundaries, but all of that is to get to the fifth point, which is to say, ultimately, parents, you got to pursue the hearts of your kids for Jesus Christ, because you can have 1,000 boundaries around technology. And we said this a little bit in another video about pornography, but if their heart is not really committed to Jesus, you're fighting a losing battle, because that's ultimately the most important issue. You can have all these boundaries around them, and the reality is one day they're going to grow up, they're going to be adults, and they're going to go after what their heart most desires. And you could have had all these boundaries, and you should have those boundaries, and we have those boundaries, but ultimately what's the most important issue is their heart, and have they given their heart fully over to Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and the goal is not to control your teens, because you want, it's like a funnel where it's tight control when they're younger, and as they get older, you want to expand that freedom that they have. But even for adults, oftentimes we don't know how to use our phones properly without becoming addicted to whatever is on there, social media or just different things. And so it's really hard to put a device in our teenagers' hands and then expect them to use it wisely, because most adults don't use it with wisdom. So I think part of it too is owning that with your teens. Don't act like you're better than them, because we're not. Like we have very similar struggles. And so if you start the conversation not condemning your teen, but just saying, hey, I'm in the struggle with you. I wrestle with it too. And show them that you're willing to set boundaries to be healthy in this area, will go a long way.
Yep.
So don't just do as I say and not as I do. Show your teenager that you're willing to fight hard and put the hard things in place to fight the battle also.
Yeah, that's 100% right. And yeah, what Barry's saying, and I have those conversations with my boys all the time where I'm saying, this is what Dad's doing to protect myself, because I want to walk in purity. Here's what I'm asking you to do. And they're not two different things. It's the same thing. So
and just speak grace over your teens, because they're gonna mess up. We all messed up when we were teens, and we still mess up as adults. And so I would just say that if your teen is brave enough to be honest with you about their struggle, to meet them with grace, and then just to remind them that you're on their team and that you will help them however, and that you're not trying to control them because you don't trust them. You're trying to help them to grow into young men and women who are wise and who love the Lord and love their families well.
And to all you teenagers watching this video, we love you. We are rooting for you. We are sorry that you're growing up in a season where you're having to fight these temptations and these battles every single day.
They're real.
They're real. But we just want you to know pornography is a lie. And God has something better for you and for your sexuality. And so don't believe the lies of pornography, and just trust that God has something greater for you.
And don't fall into the trap of saying, well, everybody's doing it, so I might as well do it too, because be different, stand out.
That's good.
Because you're not accountable for all of them, but you are accountable to yourself.
That's right.
And want the best for yourself. Don't settle just because maybe everybody around you is settling. You go a different way and lead out.
That's right. We love you. We hope you've enjoyed this video. Let us know your thoughts below.
Yeah.